It all started in the 60s. Love in the streets, a war in Vietnam, George Harrison mixing rock and roll with the mantra from Krishna.
They thought their parents' lives, for the most part, were unsatisfactory to them. Some of them thought their parents' lives were actually failures. They wanted to find a different way of life.
So, we had many people who joined communes of one sort or another. People who found ways to kind of opt out of the society, whether that was drug-induced dropping out of the society or not. Others began to look for real alternatives to that society. And Krishna consciousness became one such alternative, at least for some.
But the Krishnas were very different. In many ways, the antithesis of the 60s. No sex, no drugs, no rock and roll.
When I first went to a Hare Krishna temple, and they told me about these 4 principles, no meat, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, I looked the guy right in the eye and I said, "What do you do?"
Some couple had come up from San Francisco, and they introduced this chanting of Hare Krishna that they had seen in Haight-Ashbury or wherever. My hippie life was getting pretty repulsive.
They had been burnt out in the counterculture. They were just, too much drugs, too much sex, too much out of control, wanting something stable in their lives and having some meaning in their lives.
A friend of mine told me about love celebration at Tompkins Square Park, and I knew I had been seeking a guru for a while. So Krishna sent me there, and I was there, and after meeting some of the initiates, I knew that the Swami really had to be into something.
This was great. This was, it was tough at first. I mean, you were just, for the first 6 months, you're a little bit like in a daze.
Their parents didn't know what to think.
He was shocked when I became a hippie, so to him it was just another thing I was into, some weird thing. Once you got through the shock and the mental agitation, then it was quite blissful.
When kids ditch their religious upbringing, shave their heads, wrap themselves in robes, and give up most of their worldly possessions and passions, you've got to figure that someone with a whole lot of appeal is pulling them in. That someone was a man from India named Prabhupada.
We're talking about somebody who really is an extraordinary person. Sociologists talk about, people with charisma. Prabhupada was certainly one of those people with charisma.
If anyone knows a lot about Prabhupada, it's Professor Burke Rochford of Middlebury College. Since the early 1970s, when Rochford was a graduate student at UCLA, he's been intrigued by the Hare Krishnas and by the amazing life history of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
He was educated in English schools. He was a manager in a chemical firm, a man of great business sense and wisdom.
And he was devoutly religious, a high-caste Hindu who spent much of his life in India studying under a guru. That guru was a member of a small, charismatic Hindu denomination known as Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna is a modern manifestation of a very ancient Vaishnava Hindu tradition.
Anutama Das is a member of and spokesman for the governing commission of modern-day Krishnas.
The Vaishnava tradition is based on the Sanskrit writings of India that go back at least 5,000 years. It's one of the dominant denominations, if you will, in India. 500 years ago, there was a great saint named Chaitanya who revitalized the tradition with a particular emphasis on the Hare Krishna chanting.
Chaitanya dismissed most Hindu denominations as stuffy and elitist. He figured everyone, regardless of caste, should feel free to celebrate the love of God, often pictured as blue-skinned Krishna, by enthusiastically dancing, singing, and chanting.
And he was a revolutionary. He was disliked by the establishment at the time because he was offering this whole process to people that were disqualified previously, because they weren't Brahmin, they weren't born in the right family, didn't have the right education.
In 1896, Prabhupada himself was born a Brahmin, yet he too eventually embraced the Hare Krishna's populist message.
Very few took to this practice as strictly as he did.
But Prabhupada's enthusiasm wasn't shared by his wife and children.
He had great difficulties in his marriage for many, many years. It was not really a marriage of love.
Clinical psychologist Dr. Arnold Weiss of Los Angeles spent many years studying Prabhupada and his North American devotees.
At the age of 50, he became a sannyasi, which is the renounced order of life, basically monkhood, after you raise a family and provide economically, physically, and socially for the family and for the children. You then at that point leave that life and go as a missionary.
But Prabhupada was reportedly stunned when his guru gave him an assignment. Leave India, he was told, and spread the word of Hare Krishna throughout the Judeo-Christian stronghold of North America.
He knew nothing about the West. When he was sent to the West, he told his spiritual master, "How can I go? I know nothing about the culture."
Coming to America really without sponsorship, at the age of 69 years old, with very, very little money in his pocket, finds himself on the Lower East Side of New York, in Tompkins Square Park, where he just went each day, sat under a tree in Tompkins Square Park, and chanted. That's it. That's how it started.
In 1966, a year after arriving, Prabhupada incorporated his religion using the rather optimistic title, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, known commonly these days as the acronym ISKCON.
He begins attracting some of this musician bohemian crowd.
They gathered in a cramped storefront, an old gift shop in New York's Bowery district.
Some small number of that crowd that are attracted to him, a few of them take initiation from him in New York. So he has a base then in New York.
One of Prabhupada's earliest followers went to San Francisco, where he was organizing rock and roll shows. He wrote to Prabhupada asking him to come out west.
And it's there where all this really takes off.
The Summer of Love, Haight-Ashbury, a groovy-looking old man, bald, barefoot, preaching about Godhead and enlightenment, had settled smack in the middle of thousands of potential converts.
And here's this Indian guru sitting there who's talking about these things that they really didn't really understand on the one hand. They couldn't understand his accent on the other hand, but they knew somehow that this man was bringing them a kind of spiritual knowledge that they ought to know about, and it was just far out.
My mission is to preach the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Within a year and a half, he had 200 converts. Most were young, and with nowhere else to live, moved into the Hare Krishna temple.
That means that that Prabhupada begins to ask them that they live according to certain principles, that they not eat meat, that they not take intoxication, that they not be involved in illicit sex, that they not gamble, that they begin chanting rounds.
If you're not a Hare Krishna, it's still likely you've heard the Hare Krishna chant.
Hare refers to Radha, or the feminine aspect of God, and Krishna is a name of God that means the all-attractive. So when we chant this prayer, Hare Krishna, that people see us chanting often, this is actually, it's a meditation or prayer that's asking God, my dear Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service.
For devout Christians, the ultimate goal is eternal life in heaven. For devout Hindus, including the Hare Krishnas, the ultimate goal is to escape eternal reincarnation.
If one is a lover of God, whatever their religious faith or practice, if they develop love for God, they go to the kingdom of God. And if we have other desires, then God allows us to have another body. It's called reincarnation or karma. We get another body, material form, to allow us to fulfill our desires. Man proposes and God disposes.
Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda.